what I see out there is a real hunger for Democrats. People are still excited about my election. They're still excited about the possibilities. They are more excited now with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and Shamari Figures potentially adding a name. But they don't really have a home. They don't really have a channel to do it because they do not trust the party to do anything except to have two people control the power base of the party for themselves and not to broaden the voices in all this.
Alrighty, welcome in Alabama Politics This Week. I am your host, or one of your hosts, Josh Moon. The other host is
David Person.
I like that pronunciation. I need to start pronouncing mine.
I'm still munching on some oatmeal, so I had to,
This is as serious as we take it. Okay.
Had to over-enunciate.
That's right. I understand. All right. Hey, look, we got a good one. We got a good show for you coming up. We're gonna break down some of the medical marijuana issues with Jack Mooresmith, who has done some fantastic work in kind of explaining to people what's going on with that. So we're going to talk to him a little bit. We're also going to talk to former Senator Doug Jones about some issues with the Alabama Democratic Party and the National Party, and we should have some fun. First, before we get into this thing, let me tell you about our sponsors. They are Wind Creek Entertainment, and of course the Porch Creek Indians, and we really enjoy them being a sponsor. Listen, I like them a lot, regardless. But as a sponsor, they are they're so great because they never ask for anything. They never say, "Hey, we don't want you to talk about this. Hey, would you please talk about that?" They never ask. They just say, "Hey, mention our places. Try to get some people to go and see these places and stay with us." And so that's what we do. And so I wish you would. They have 3 locations in the state of Alabama. They are in Atmore, Wetumpka, and Montgomery. You can find just really fantastic amenities at all 3 locations. But the ones in Atmore in particular and in Wetumpka, those are their large resort locations. And you should book a stay, especially if you're heading down to the beach, or, let's say you're headed over to Auburn for a football game. Want to stay somewhere. I highly recommend the place in Wetumpka. Would not be bad. A nice little weekend for everybody. Nice little weekend getaway, or the place in Montgomery as well. And I think those would be a nice little football weekend as we're about to get cranked up in the football season. Thank God. And get things moving along. So, hey, look them up online. They're Wind Creek Entertainment. Book you a stay, and you will not regret it. I guarantee you that. All right, let's get into this. So our top story is this ADP DNC delegate thing. And if you're unfamiliar, the Alabama Democratic Party is currently attempting to challenge the national party's selection of several delegates from the state of Alabama that are going to go to the convention and nominate Kamala Harris as the nominee for the Democratic Party. So the beef here is the state party put up several delegates. Okay, it's 50 some odd, I believe it is 50 some odd delegates. The national party, well, actually, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say the national party. The Biden administration, President Biden and Kamala Harris, the ticket, then came back as is their right to do, and said, we don't like those delegates. We're going to give you these delegates instead. And they selected several delegates. Of course, this angered the folks in the state, although this is a practice that has occurred previously, maybe not on the same scale as this one, but it is a practice that occurred during the Obama years. Obama also made selections of the delegates in Alabama and picked different delegates than what had been put forth. This time around, there is a big fight, and the party has said, the state party has said that this is about race. This is the work of some white people that are trying to disenfranchise the black folks in the state party, that they are they removed their selections and they put in some other selections, and behind it all was and I swear to God, and matter of fact, I'm going to write this after we talked to him, Doug Jones, Randy Kelly, head of the Alabama Democratic Party, called Doug Jones a Confederate Democrat, and said he was behind it all. This Confederate Democrat and racist, Doug Jones, was behind it all, and he was the one pushing this whole thing. Now we're gonna talk to the senator about this.
So let me just make sure I want to be crystal clear about this. Those are his exact words. He called him a Confederate Democrat.
Those are his exact words. And a matter of fact, he also called Jamie Harrison a token black man who was just doing what the folks told him to do. And just I want to be extra clear here. After he said these things, I went back and I said, Reverend Kelly, come on, man, Confederate Democrat. And he reiterated Confederate Democrat. Yes, Confederate Democrat. We got a lot of them. And then I said, and because in the same sentence, this is the thing that I went back on the second one is because I asked about. I said, come on, you don't believe. I said, we're talking about. I said, you've made it. I said, do you understand? Let me be clear in what I said. I said, do you understand why people have a hard time believing that this is about race when you're talking about a ticket that is led by Kamala Harris and a national party that is led by Jamie Harrison? And he said, well, we've got a lot of token black people that just do what. And I went back and said, wait a minute, are you calling Kamala Harris a token black person? And he said, no, they was not referring to her as a token black person, but he was referring to Jamie Harrison as a token black person because he had a conversation with Harrison at one time, and Harrison told him he was just going to do whatever they told him to do. So,
well,
yeah,
so this is this is problematic. In my mind, this is really problematic in both directions, but mostly in the direction of, Reverend Dr. Kelly. But I will say this before I talk about that. I will say this. I think in light of the context, which has always been from the beginning of this whole dispute, which goes back several years now, it's really rooted in what happened several years ago, right?
Right.
In light of the context, which has always been race, it seems to me it would behoove the Democratic Party, the National Democratic Party, to not just reject delegates. They have a right to do it, okay, fine. But to explain why. Why did they reject these delegates? Why were these delegates not satisfactory or not suitable? What's the rationale? Not just do it out of hand, okay? Because they know there's a history here. They know that there are tensions here. And they know that race is a major part of that. So why would they do it? Why reject these delegates?
I'm with you, and I've reached out, and I'm hoping I can get some sort of an answer on that. And from it's my understanding that it wasn't necessarily the national party. It wasn't really Jamie Harrison. I think he's kind of stuck in the middle. This was apparently up to the campaign on how they wanted to handle this. And I will also say, as I'm sure the former senator will tell us when he comes on. He was not the only one that the campaign reached out to. They also reached out to Terry Sewell and to Randall Woodfin for advice on who they should select as delegates from the state.
And they are being remarkably silent.
Well, yeah.
On this issue.
Right. And I do think, so I think part of it was there were some people maybe that were left off the delegate list that should have been on the delegate list. The campaign felt like. I think that might be a part of it.
And that's fine, but they need to say, Josh, they need to say it. They need to be explicit. I don't doubt again it. Because of the context here.
I think I'll tell you what I think. I think some bridges have been burned by on both sides of this over over not just the things that happened several years ago. While that certainly didn't help, and this it was the touch off point for this. I think what has gone on with the bylaws, the way some actions occurred, and the way some people conducted themselves when they had to go before the bylaws committee in D.C. over trying to remove those bylaws just a few months back. I think there were a lot of people that were rubbed the wrong way by this and by the way that some people acted. And I think so. I think there's some retribution. I do. I mean, I do think that this is not as simple as you didn't choose. There's a solid explanation for this thing. You know what I mean?
But is it okay? So if it's the bylaws, if this is about the bylaws, you're saying then, if I'm putting this all together, then you're saying that whoever that cadre of people is, that they are pressuring the campaign or influencing the campaign to make certain decisions.
No, I think everybody is kind of together on at a level here with the national organization and the campaign itself. I think there's a lot of overlap in those people, but second of all, I think what they looked at with what was taking place here in this state is something that they felt was wrong. From a national perspective, and that includes the campaign, that includes the DNC itself, not just the bylaws committee and people because those folks were, we were talking about some of the bigger folks that were there, because it's not just about the bylaws, it's about the appearance of fairness, and it's about because we're not talking, when we say the bylaws, we're not really quibbling about where they're going to hold meetings and things like that. We're talking about eliminating caucuses and people, the disability caucus, for example,
right,
or some of these other things, so a person can remain in power. And that's look, that's what we're talking about. I mean, they wanted these things because one person they didn't want the bylaws because Dr. Reed wanted to maintain control of this party. All right. I mean, let's be honest about it. That's
so here's what I'm saying. I think the Democratic Party, again, because of the context, the Democratic Party owes it to the delegates that were selected and rejected, and to the Alabama Democratic Party as a whole. The National Democratic Party owes a clearer and a more direct explanation than to just simply say we're rejecting these people and that's it.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with that. That's because of the context. So whatever the rationale is, whoever's involved or not involved, I just think you can't because the appearance is that there's a manhandling going on here, and certainly from afar, not to me, because my understanding is that the delegates that they want, that the National Party wants, are still predominantly black. So if that is indeed the case, then it just looks like sort of almost a capricious sort of manhandling that's going on here, and that absolutely should not be tolerated. If that's what's going on, there needs to be a clearer explanation. Now, on the other side of this, I don't see how it benefits the Alabama Democratic Party in the short run or the long run to continue to just fight with the National Party. I mean, it seems to me like there has to be some sort of broker deal or reconciliation, especially if Alabama ever really wants to be a player in national politics. And if we want to also cultivate the kind of relationship and resources with the National Party and all of its tentacles, which include fundraisers, and donors and so forth, when you start looking at key races like the 2nd Congressional District race, we want Shamari Figures to get in there.
Yes.
We know what he's up against with Dobson. And so it doesn't help the state party to constantly be in some kind of a fisticuffs with the national party like this. Now, my final statement, Josh, is this. I'm going to put the fault here on both sets of leaders. I don't know Jamie Harrison, so this is not a personal thing. I do know Randy Kelly, but I respect Randy Kelly, and I like Randy Kelly. But having said that, I think these leaders, they need to get together. They need to sit down in a room, and they need to figure out how do we get past this. We've got serious differences between us, but this constant fighting and bickering doesn't help either side. And it certainly disproportionately hurts, I think, the Alabama Democratic Party. So how do we get past this? What do we need to do to find some sort of a sweet spot from which we can both operate in tandem for the good of the people of Alabama and Alabama Democrats in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is definitely the way that things need to happen. I don't think that there's one. I don't think that there's one side that's particularly interested in doing that. I don't get the feeling from the national level that there's a whole lot of interest in Alabama. Period. You know what I mean? I think that there is just, there's just this bickering that's taking place down here, and they have to deal with it on an occasion here or there. I don't understand. I don't understand what they feel like the benefit of this is. And when I say them, I'm talking about ADP and the leadership here. I've never understood what they think the ultimate outcome is, how it could possibly be good for them as a whole going forward, how it could ever turn out well for them. I mean, they hold, let's just look at the reality. This is a party that struggles financially all the time, struggles to have control all the time. And the only lifeline that you have are these people at the national level. And you have alienated yourself from them, and you've alienated yourself from most of the major fundraising sources that go along with the Democratic National Committee. So what possible advantage do you have from doing this? And I'll tell you something else. The claims of this is based in racism, they ring so hollow and untrue and silly that, I mean, that letter that they sent up there claiming that this was race, where they conveniently omitted Terry Sewell and Randall Woodfin from this. It read like something that would have been written in the 60s or the 70s. And not that you were sending this to the black head of the national party that is currently running a ticket with, that is led by a black woman. It doesn't, if you want to say this is wrong, just say it's wrong. It doesn't have to be this, and I know why they're doing it. I know why they're doing it is because, again, Reed's base of power in this is the black caucus within the party. And I get that. And he wants to ensure that he maintains control of that base of people and that those folks support him. And so in doing that, I think he's trying to make them feel as though they have been wronged in this. And, to a certain degree, maybe some of those folks have been wronged in this. All right. I'm not saying that at all. I do think that you're right. And somebody should have said, hey, we're replacing these delegates because of X, Y, and Z. And maybe Doug Jones can give us a better explanation of what happened. Although he says he's not sure why they made the decisions that they did to remove some of the delegates. He was just contacted after the fact. Of course, Randy Kelly said that that's not, he knows that that's not true, that Doug Jones was calling around trying to get a delegate spot and because he wanted one. And we can ask Doug about that, but so maybe, we can ask and try to figure out exactly why they felt like this was something that needed to be done. There was some explanation of the fact that the campaign chose to only select one delegate from each district. in the state per Alabama's delegate plan that they had submitted, and then the party missed several deadlines. So to challenge those things, I don't know. I don't know what was going on.
Well, there's one other thing here that occurs to me. Well, there's really more than one other thing, but I'll just settle on this one for now. The idea that Alabama is just sort of an irritant, kind of like a fleck of dust in the eye or something, is pretty disappointing. And I say that because, there are many of us who are Democrats in the state and who actively work to support the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. And the idea that, we're just a nuisance as a party. I'm not talking about as individuals, but as a party.
Right. No, I didn't mean that. What I meant is I don't think, I think sometimes what they're saying here is leading people to believe that the Democratic Party the National Party has some vendetta against the state of Alabama. And what I meant is they don't think of Alabama really any more than they think of any other state. It's just that every now and then they have to come in and deal with the bickering back and forth that's going on in this state. Otherwise, it's essentially the same as whatever others, Georgia, Mississippi, whatever.
You really think that? Do you think that they value Alabama the same way they do Pennsylvania or Georgia?
No, I don't think that at all.
That's my point. That's my point. And I think this whole conflagration is an example of that. It's indicative of that. They don't. And I have a feeling that if we were Pennsylvania or Georgia or California, or Illinois, that they would be handling this differently. I'm talking about the National Party. I think they'd be handling this differently.
Probably so. I don't know. I don't know what other ways they would do it, but I do. I think there would be a lot more attention paid here. There would be a lot more. There would be a lot more resources dumped into the state. This is one of the things that Anthony Daniels has talked about. In the past, where. And it just doesn't, they don't see Alabama as a competitive state, right. and so they have, it's kind of the same with us, Mississippi, some of these other,
right.
Some of the other states.
Josh, my point is that they should see us not as we are, but as what we could be, as what we could be. This state, if this state were to, by some miracle. And it's been blue before. That's what people forget. This state was blue for many, many years. Now it wasn't the same shade of blue that, California or Illinois or some other place was, but it was blue. And it could be blue again. And if it were blue again, what an asset it would be to the Democratic Party in terms of helping to influence the landscape, the political landscape in the southeast part of the country.
Well,
and it seems to me they're missing an opportunity here to help lay the foundation for what could be in another few years, maybe 10 years down the line, maybe 3 years down the line, a different kind of Alabama politically.
Well, let me ask you this.
All right.
Would you give money to this state party? Would
Not
you devote
currently.
limited resources to this state party and the way that it's led and the way people are behaving about things?
Well, I'm not saying currently would I dump a lot of money into it, but I'm saying I think they could begin to, if it were me, if I were Jamie Harrison, I would like to think and hope and pray that what I would do is I would look at Alabama. I'd be looking at the Southeast a lot more strategically. And I would try to mend fences and build reconciliation and build relationships where I could to try to lay the foundation for the kind of scenario in which in a few years I could comfortably say it's going to be worth it to dump 10 or $20 million into Alabama, you know, and to allocate the kind of resources to Alabama because that will help us. Alabama can become a player, you know, but you can't see us just as we are. You have to see us as what we could be.
Right, but I think a part of that is you have to have confidence because that's, you know, I mean, we look at Georgia and we hear what happened in Georgia, and that took 15 years essentially of intricate planning of people that were working hard, that were doing the right things, that were fundraising, that were going out and doing all the necessary stuff that led to that turnaround in that state. I don't think that they look at what's happening in the state of Alabama right now and they see a viable opportunity for people to build from the ground up. They don't see those sorts of smart investments being made by the state party. They don't see those sorts of get out the vote efforts being made by the state party in the leadership that is there right now. They don't seem to think that there's and I've heard them say this, they don't seem to think that there's a good strategic plan that is being executed. There might be a plan, but nobody's really executing the plan from top to bottom in the state and going around and doing things that need to be done, the things that happened in a Georgia, a North Carolina, and some of these other places that turn things around. And I think that's the reason why they're hesitant to get involved in a big way like they would be in some other states.
Right. Okay. So I'm not saying they should get involved in a big way. Okay. I'm saying they should get involved. And I think they need to be smart about it. And the way I would do it is, first and foremost, I would start with what you have. You have Anthony Daniels, smart guy, you know, innovative guy. You have Terry Sewell, successful congresswoman who's been able to hang on. You've got Randall Woodfin. You hopefully will have Shamari Figures. You know, you start with what you have, and you start to begin to discuss, how do we make this thing different? The other thing that I think you got to do is, you brought up Georgia. Why not send an ambassador to Alabama like a Stacey Abrams? Why not task her with working with these other people, you know, who are here, who are innovative, enlightened thinkers, and that have proven who you think you can reach. See, how do we, you know, Stacey Abrams, maybe you talk to Woodfin and the rest of them and figure this thing out, or start working on something. You know, maybe and then once you got something that you think is workable, Stacey Abrams, you be the ambassador to Randy Kelly. You know, well, you speak to him on our behalf and start to help broker some kind of a détente here, so that we can eventually move from a hot war to a cold war to no war, where we're working together as allies.
Well, that's I don't know.
Lofty.
I think that
Lofty.
Yeah, well, it's lofty, but I also think that they look at it and say, well, you know, we can't get some of those people on the same page within the state, and so. But we got to get to Doug. So right. Let's slide out of here. We'll pick this back up when we wrap up in the final segment. This is Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. We're back in a minute. Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person, and we are happy as always to have with us former U.S. Senator Doug Jones, also our leading Confederate Democrat, and we talked about this a little bit in the open, so people know what we're talking about, and my thoughts on it. Hey, thanks for popping on and spending some time.
Guys, it is always great to be with you. Thanks for letting me come on, but also just thanks for what you do and keeping folks informed. It's in a very objective way, and I really appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We do our best. And speaking of keeping folks informed, one of the reasons we wanted to get you on was the back and forth that we have talked about now for the first segment about the delegates in the state, and according to the chairman of the Alabama Democratic Party, you are the guy that was behind this whole thing. The reason why the Biden administration chose to do away with some delegates they had chosen and select their own, and then you helped select some of the others, and you benefited from it, and so I guess where, if you could, and if you know, why, what was the reason why they got rid of the delegates at the Biden administration, and what role did you play, if any?
Well, first of all, let me say, I do appreciate the fact that there are people in the state that believe I have unlimited power over the president of the United States. I mean, I should be kind of embracing that as opposed to
Yeah.
trying to tell the truth and the facts. But, so that's kind of funny and a little bit laughable. But the fact is, guys, you got to go back a long way on this. And I really don't know. I've never talked to the Biden campaign about why they made this decision. But they made this decision back in the fall. Before, remember, we had an early primary in March, and so qualifying ended in November. So this had to be made early on. So this is not new. This is, in fact, I was on your show at one point
Mm-hmm.
back earlier in the year to try to explain that some of this. So they made a decision, and I don't really know. I can tell you that if you look at the history in Alabama, but the particular leadership that this party has in place right now, I don't know if they trust them. I'm just being candid about that. You go back to 2008 when the leadership that's in the party now elected to endorse, did not endorse Barack Obama in the primaries. That goes back to
Mm-hmm.
2008. In 2020, they did not endorse Joe Biden in 2020. They endorsed Michael Bloomberg, who finished a dismal third in this race. And aside from the fact, Josh, that you have the chairman and vice chairman of the party that are endorsing candidates in a Democratic primary is kind of unseemly anyway. They should be
Mm-hmm.
being neutral, but they're not. So then after that, you have all of the turmoil that has been created by Chairman Kelly and the Vice Chair Joe Reed over the last 6 or 7 years, challenging the addition, trying to make the party more diverse and give voices to youth, LGBTQ, Hispanics. They have fought that tooth and nail. The first thing they fought it initially back when I was in the Senate. When Randy was elected, and by the way, he was elected fair and square. I've had no issue with that. I never have. In fact, I've told him that. They immediately tried to do away with the caucuses and to make Alabama not consistent with the Alabama Democratic Party, not consistent with the Alabama Democratic electorate. And that's not what the Biden team was about. It's not what the Harris team was about. They are about about diversity, inclusiveness, and giving voices to everyone, not to dilute any voices. That's been the big lie about all this, that there was somehow a dilution of the black voices. Not true at all. So no one has ever said that to me, but it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure that out about why in November, the Biden campaign said, we don't want to put up with the chaos. We don't want to take chances. We want people that we know are loyal to the Biden campaign and the DNC, not to themselves. And so they made a decision, and this is incredibly important. It's what I said back in January, February when this came up. They made a decision to exercise a portion of our delegate selection plan that is given to every presidential candidate, and that is to approve the delegates. They always do that, but in this case, this is Alabama's plan that the chairman and the vice chairman put in front of the committee, and the committee adopted. And so the Biden team said, we're only going to approve a candidate for each delegate spot. And in effect, that selects the delegate. But that decision was made without me. It was, I don't know who all made that decision. I just got a call and was informed of that decision after, by the way, they called me, and it was my folks that work with me that gathered the signatures to put that coordinated gathering the signatures to put Joe Biden on the ballot. They called me, and so they called and said, "We have made this decision. We want recommendations." I said, "Okay."
So, Doug, did they actually? You articulated it in a way that I've not heard it. The rationale I'm talking about. You articulated it in a way that I've not heard it, which is I think is interesting because it informs this whole conversation at a much higher level. So let me ask you this: the rationale that you just laid out for why they did it, is that your informed opinion, or is that coming from the campaign?
No, it is not coming from the campaign. No one has ever said to me, and I didn't bother to ask. It is an informed opinion based on the history. And it's an informed opinion based on the constant turmoil that the Alabama Democratic Party has created within the DNC and the campaign. I mean, that has been constant. It has been something they've had to deal with. They're so tired of dealing with Alabama. It is the most dysfunctional party. And every time they turn around, they've had to deal with someone trying to bully them into some kind of something. So it's an informed opinion, but it is only that, David. It is only that, and I cannot speak for the campaign. I cannot speak for the DNC. But remember, this was primarily the campaign's decision. It is the candidate's decision as to who that candidate wants on their delegates. We're not electing the governor here. We're not, it's not that kind of vote. We're electing someone who is going to be loyal to the party and loyal to the candidate. And so the candidate, and this is not the first time. Everybody talks about how unprecedented this is. It's not. It has happened. I believe it has happened in other states. We were told it was going to be going on in other states. I haven't confirmed that. I've been pretty busy to try to canvass 50 states to see. But I think that, but that's what we were told. And so the second phase of this was the campaign contacting folks to get recommendations, only recommendations. They contacted me. I gave recommendations. They talked to Terry Sewell, who is actually the delegation charge. And Terry is the campaign manager for the Biden campaign, not me. Terry Sewell is the campaign manager, and she was the main point of contact for the campaign. They contacted Mayor Randall Woodfin to get recommendations. We all gave recommendations, and then the Biden campaign vetted all of those recommendations. Some of them made it as delegates, some of them did not. But what the Biden campaign did was to try to make sure, they wanted to ensure that the delegation was composed of people loyal to Joe Biden and that it was diverse and represented the Democratic electorate, which is something I doubt that Randy Kelly or Joe Reed would have achieved. They would have excluded and only brought the people they wanted on. So I was included, but that was it. I didn't orchestrate. I didn't do anything like this. I just gave recommendations. And significantly, guys, and this is important too, I want y'all to remember, and I hope people out there will consider the fact when Chairman Kelly complains about this, and when he sends this missive that is just more of a stream of unconsciousness than anything else, it is, they don't mention Terry Sewell's role, and they don't mention Randall Woodfin's role, because that doesn't fit into the narrative about this as some racist plot. So they just ignore that. And it's important to remember that they had as much, if not bigger roles than I did in purely making recommendations. And then the Biden campaign made their selections. And I understand why some people who always run for these things, we're not happy about it. I get that. But that's a decision that was right according to the rules that Kelly and Reed put forth to the SDC.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to something you said because I had brought this up in the open when we were talking about this, and that was the fact that the National Party takes a pretty poor view of the state party currently, and the thing that I didn't bring up in the first that I think is important right now is if you had watched those bylaw hearing, the meetings that took place in D.C. over the Alabama's bylaws, and you watched what took place, and you watched the comments that went back and forth between the people there. It was very obvious to anybody who watched that the leadership of the National Party was fairly appalled by what was taking place. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, although I don't know that anybody that's talking currently would disagree with the bylaws that had been the new bylaws that had been put in place that they were trying to do away with that were more inclusive. But when you watch them, they were very clearly appalled by what had been taking place. Matter of fact, there were some pretty impassioned speeches by the folks that were in leadership positions there with the DNC. So, I mean, and this is what I said to Randy Kelly yesterday. It seems to make more sense that y'all have burned too many bridges up there, and this was some level of retribution. And so when I say that to you, knowing a lot of those folks that are at the national level and work within the party and having worked with them when you were in the Senate and other places, do you feel like that's the case?
Well, I think that this, for some reason, is just personal for Kelly and Reed against me, because I tried to do this within the system, within the framework back in 2018, and I just got the old Heisman stiff arm. We needed to have an inclusive party. We needed to, the DNC rules and regulations called for caucuses that reflected the Alabama Democratic electorate. And the fact of the matter is, our electorate is a big tent. It is not just black and white. It is a big tent, and we needed to pull people in and voices while honoring the traditional the community, the black community that is in fact the core of the Democratic base. And that's what they did. But no, they didn't want to do that, Josh. They simply did not want to do that. And so there was this created tension. We ultimately won. They got the control of the party back. But the fact is that they have continued to stymie those voices. And it's not right to do that. And I think a lot of this right now is just purely directed at me. It's really unfortunate because I go around the state speaking to Democrats all the time. We get great crowds. People are excited. What I see out there is a real hunger for Democrats. People are still excited about my election. They're still excited about the possibilities. They are more excited now with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and Shamari Figures potentially adding a name. But they don't really have a home. They don't really have a channel to do it because they do not trust the party to do anything except to have two people control the power base of the party for themselves and not to broaden the voices and all this. So I think it's as much as for anything. They're just mad at me because I've got a pretty decent following out there, and people are tired. They don't want, and I've stressed this too. I keep being accused of wanting to run the party. Hell, that's like, who would want to be the captain of the Titanic, for God's sakes? I don't want to do that, but I also don't want any one person to control the Democratic Party. We got to have voices out there. It's just like the state. In order for this state to progress, Democrats have to be competitive and to give people choices. Within our own party, we've got to have voices out there that give people opportunities to have discussions and debate and move forward together, and not candidly play the race card every time somebody pushes back on you, but to work together. We can have legitimate disagreements about things, but the way that this is being done and the pushback from them is really unseemly.
So let me stipulate, first of all, that I think characterizing you as a neo-Confederate Democrat is way, way, way inappropriate and out of bounds. Okay, let me just say that first of all. Having said that, I feel that there is room here for everybody to take a step back, reevaluate, and try to see the bigger picture, which is, I think it's bigger than you, Doug. I think
Absolutely.
It's bigger than Randy Kelly. It's bigger than all the other players. You know, Alabama, I was saying to Josh before you came on, Alabama, I think, needs to be seen by the Democratic Party, not as it is, but as it could be. And what it could be in terms of helping to not only to see the state turn blue, but to help the Southeast and these neo-Confederate states in particular, or I'm sorry, not neo-Confederate states, but the states of the Confederacy, you know, this block of red that's down here, to help dissipate that.
David,
you know what?
I'm 100%. I'm
ahead.
100% with you.
Okay.
If people have followed some of my speeches over the last 6 or 7 years, more political speeches, not necessarily on the floor of the Senate, but one of the things that I have said in these political speeches is that Alabama and the South is where most of the divisions in this country began. And we can be the place of healing. We can be the place of unity. I continually cite the fact that and criticize the National Party for ignoring the South, in particular because I have told them, and I gave this speech in Kentucky recently. I've given it in Tennessee. But I've also given it outside the South. There are 5 southern states. There are 5 states in this country where the black population is growing faster than the Hispanic population. And that's South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. That is opportunities. Those are opportunities to expand our electorate. And in fact, those 5 states have an incredible percentage of the younger black population under age 30 than any states in the country. Those 5 states, which gives us opportunity. I have been preaching that for long. And I'm going to say this too. You know, look, I didn't support Randy Kelly as chair, but I didn't support the others. I was not involved. I have stayed away from this in the sense of trying to let the party run. But if you remember back, this was August of 22 when he was elected. They tried to immediately change the bylaws. They couldn't get a quorum. They tried it again in January. They couldn't, I forget, whatever. I mean, these guys try to do this stuff and people step back and say, we don't want to have a part of it. But back in early 2023, after a couple of efforts to do away with these caucuses, I called him. I said, Randy, look, here's the thing. I have told people you've been elected fair and square. You got elected in August, and your opening talk was about bringing this party together and unifying. I kept telling all the antagonists that you have out there, and you got a bunch, give him a chance. Give him a chance to do exactly that, because you've got an opportunity to do that if you will embrace the voices that have not been heard that now have a seat at the table. Embrace those voices. A lot of them voted for you. Do that. Don't do away with these caucuses. Just forget that. Tell Joe to put that aside and work with folks. I said, if you do that, you will have an opportunity to, I think, be one of the leading voices and one of the best party chairs that we've had in a long, long time. If you will simply embrace the diversity of this thing. And I got a very polite, well, thanks for calling. And he hung up. And they immediately step out. So, David, I agree with you. And we have tried, and I think people in this party have absolutely tried to do that. It's why they continue to fight for them, despite the fact that there were serious questions about quorums and things like that and the way meetings are run. They continue to fight for the caucuses. We've got them back now, and there is this opportunity. But you can't do that when one person exerts control and doesn't reach out and to try to embrace everybody in the party. I
Okay,
think,
so Doug, just two quick things before Josh has us wrap up. One, I'd like for you to tell us where Terry Sewell and Randall Woodfin stand on all of this in terms of, I mean, we've invoked their names, so where
right.
do they stand on all of this to the best of your knowledge? And then two, do you think we could benefit from bringing in somebody outside to sort of, as an ambassador from the party, to try to negotiate a détente? Somebody like maybe a Stacey Abrams.
Well, let me let's do the first one. Okay. The Terry Sewell is the chairman of the delegation. She is chairman of the delegation that Randy Kelly is calling a fake delegation. Okay. She is chairman of the delegation. She has placed people in committees. She has done some things. She knows this process. She knows me, and she knows that this has not been some orchestrated racial Confederate States of America kind of white supremacist thing. She knows that. Randall Woodfin is the same way. I talked to the mayor the other day, and because we're trying to figure out exactly how to respond if need be, and I may not. But he said, look, you use my name however you feel appropriate because I know the facts, and you push back however you need that, because if you look, you can see their fingerprints on a lot of these delegates, people that are close to them, especially in the second district. I mean, in the seventh district and elsewhere, you can see that it doesn't take a rock. Our delegation is 65% black. Okay, so you can see that, and I believe that they will tell you. They may. I don't know. I think it's hard for them to even acknowledge because of their involvement that this was some kind of racial. I don't think that they will do that at all because they know it's not, and they know my role was limited as well as theirs. Look, I don't think that everything that I've read and seen from the chairman. I don't think they're interested in a détente. They're interested in control. They think they have control. They didn't have control of the convention delegation, but based on their own rules and delegate selection plan, they did not have that control, and that's why they were so upset. I'm happy to talk to anybody about my views of the Alabama Democratic Party, just like I've given yours. I can tell you that these folks have very little respect among Democrats in Alabama, and that's unfortunate. I don't know if a mediator can gain that respect. They've got to do that themselves. They've got to demonstrate that they are trying to bring this party together and not divide it along racial lines. And you can just see the rhetoric. You don't see that kind of stuff coming from anybody else. You see it coming from them. And no one's opposed to it, David. I question whether, and they don't, and if it costs money, I'm not sure they've got the money to pay for it. So, we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I am never one to turn down the opportunity to try to figure out ways to move forward. That's what I did in my call to him a year and a half ago. And I got a curt reply, and you've seen what the result has been. And I'm telling you, I haven't even gone to the SDC meetings. I've stayed away, because I don't want to give them ammunition for this. We've got a lot of young people. We've got a lot of good folks on there who want to really do some things, who are tired of these shenanigans. If they would just let them work with them, that's all it takes. It doesn't take Stacey or somebody else coming in to try to, because the one thing you said, David, that I really don't particularly like is the word negotiate. This shouldn't be a negotiation between two sides. This should be somebody coming in and saying, all right, we're going to recognize voices We're going to play with those. We might disagree, but we'll see where we go. You shouldn't have to negotiate something like this. You just have to recognize we're all in this together, and we have got historic opportunities right now. We've got historic opportunities with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and Shamari Figures, more so than after my election in 2017. This is an opportunity to start building and being competitive. We're not going to win Alabama. We're not going to win, although I think we're going to win the 2nd congressional district. But we can start building for 26 and beyond. It's a process, but it takes more than just simply. It takes a lot. It takes somebody who wants to build the party and not just maintain control and power.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all right. Before we get you out, and I'll be real quick because I know you got to go, and completely complete left field question here, because I've been wanting to ask this. We are now running up on this election where the Republican nominee is a guy who led a coup against the United States government. Essentially, I mean, he had a whole plan to overturn the vote. He had he had fake electors. We know this is taking place, and yet we're 4 years on from that almost, and we have had no real meaningful action against that person from the Department of Justice and the person that runs the Department of Justice. My thoughts. I thought you should have been the Attorney General for the United States. And so all biases are there. But is it surprising to you that, because I feel pretty strongly that we are left in this position where that person is at the top of that ticket and a threat to become the president again, because some actions were not taken by the Department of Justice in a timely manner. And so I just wonder your thoughts on that.
Well, look, I think the disadvantage we have is knowing everything that they know. We saw the media, we saw the news, we saw the January 6th committee. So we have the disadvantage of not knowing all the information they had. And there's a lot that goes into these decisions, Josh. The other thing I think that that perhaps could not have been anticipated is some of the court rulings that we've seen coming out of Mar-a-Lago, some of the court rulings with the U.S. Supreme Court, the delays. I mean, there are a lot of, I think there are as many criticisms of the judicial system right now as there are with the Department of Justice, because we have seen clearly, it appeared to me that there was some thumbs on the scale in terms of the delays that have been created here. I know these things are not something that you could just do overnight and get to trial overnight. So it's really difficult to say, but I think it's one of those situations where the department has had to play the hand they're dealt. And with some of the most recent Supreme Court rulings, they've not had a good hand. And they're right now, I saw where Jack Smith the other day asked for a continuance of trying to get some briefs in on where the case stands right now. And I think that was appropriate. You got to just play the hand that you're dealt. And it's not a good one. The one thing that I want to remind folks of, though, and this is connected, but it's a little bit off topic of a specific answer. The latest ruling from the Supreme Court, guys, the one about the immunity, the sweeping order, which quite frankly, I was even surprised at. I thought they would do something, but it was so sweeping in what they do to give a president's immunity for official acts, that everyone right now, everyone ought to put character and integrity back at the top of their list when it comes to voting for president. Yes, policy is important, the debt's important, taxes are important, national security is important, but now character and integrity ought to be paramount. And hopefully we won't ever have to test that again, because we will continue to have presidents of the United States who follow the law, who have character, and who have integrity. And so it doesn't really matter. And we can spend the next 250 years in the same manner that we've been with the first 250 years, that we've had good presidents and bad presidents. What we've not had truly corrupt presidents, except for a couple of exceptions. Richard Nixon, it was the 50th anniversary of his resignation. But even that was a different form of corruption. And so I hope, and I'm speaking particularly to our business community friends these days, because I know this community in Alabama, and those folks have much more character and integrity. They would never hire Donald Trump as their CEO or CFO in their companies. Never, ever. They wouldn't do it. And they damn sure shouldn't give him the reins of power again.
Yeah, well, listen, I think what I heard you say there is that Donald Trump would have been in jail if he were AG. But that's fine. It's just
no. Don't put those words in my mouth, Josh.
I'm joking. Listen, hey, thank you for coming on and spending a long period of time breaking this down and being so open about the whole thing and about what is taking place. And I hope it gives people a better understanding of where things are, and maybe we can start to move forward a little bit on this.
I hope so. I hope so.
Doug.
It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time right now for us.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Appreciate it. Former Senator Doug Jones. It's always great to come on, and we appreciate him so much. And it's always nice to have him in here with us. So we'll slide out. We're going to come back. We're going to talk to Jack Mooresmith when we come back about medical marijuana. We'll be back in a minute. Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wing Creek Entertainment. Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person, and we are happy now to be joined for the first time and on his first podcast ever with John Mooresmith. That's he a longtime attorney in the state of Alabama, and one of the key architects of Alabama's Administrative Procedures Act, which I know most folks in the regular world out there, they don't deal a whole lot with the Alabama Administrative Procedures Act or know kind of what's going on, but you would probably be surprised by the way it does affect your life through various agencies and things. But the reason that we had Mr. Mooresmith come in and join us today was he had penned an op-ed the other day about the Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission and the way that it has essentially violated the Alabama Administrative Procedures Act on a number of fronts, and that is the reason why we are currently having so many troubles legal wise with getting medical marijuana into the hands of patients. And so first of all, Mr. Mooresmith, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
I guess, can you kind of explain what, though, I guess in as tight a way as we can you explain the way the Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission has screwed this whole process up in terms of administrative procedure?
Sure. The Alabama Administrative Procedure Act and constitutional due process of law require essentially that agencies treat applicants fairly, that they get to the truth and the facts of whatever application is before them. What that entails, what the commission did was act like agencies back 30 years ago, ignoring any type of due process hearing or fair hearing for applicants. They essentially met in secret and simply decided who they were going to license and who they were going to deny, and violated the legal rights of all of the applicants that were involved. It appears to have been a conscious effort to not follow the law and get to the truth of the facts of an application. What is required for an agency to handle licensure like that is that an applicant files an application for a license. Any affected person, and by that the law means someone with a private as distinguished from a public interest, can intervene in that application. Once they intervene in that application, it becomes what the law calls a contested case, which is essentially an administrative trial, where the applicant puts on evidence on the record in front of a court reporter of why their application should be granted. They make a lot of assertions in an application that are merely statements that they make. What they have to do is prove the truth of those statements. They have to, by documents and witnesses, prove what they've said in the application. Then affected parties who have intervened have an opportunity, a right of confrontation, it's called, to examine the evidence they're presenting. They're entitled to cross-examine witnesses. They're entitled to discovery, to go into what facts support financial information, things of that nature that they have in their application. They have a right to then put on their own witnesses to rebut the evidence put on by the applicant. And by doing that, you get to essentially verify all of the information that's in an application, and the agency will have before it both all of the information to support the applicant and all of the information opposing the applicant, and then can make an intelligent decision on whether or not to grant the license. And also importantly, what that does is it creates a very detailed record for a judge to review on appeal that shows all of the information the agency had in front of it, and a judge can determine if they followed or violated the law. None of that happened with the commission. They simply decided on their own who they were going to license and who they were going to deny. And it's created a legal nightmare, in essence. And the problem is the people of Alabama who've been denied the right to get the drugs that they need.
Mm-hmm. Now, and because I wanted to kind of go through what they actually did, the Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission. So what they first of all did is they opened this thing up to licenses, and they set parameters for different folks to put license applications in for licenses, and then they initially held a review process that took place out of the public view, and then they put forward a scoring process in which they sent all of these applications to the University of South Alabama, where a bunch of graders were going to score these things, and they scored them and sent the results back. And then from those scores, the commission, in secret, basically went in and decided who was going to get the license. Well, they ultimately then spotted a number of flaws with the grades that were produced because they were ridiculous, and they tossed all of that out. Although, except for the fact where they still kept the scoring that they had, which was a result of those grades, and they kept the scoring for a period of time, and then they went back in and they, in secret, again made more decisions on who was going to get licenses, and then they announced that. And again, that was challenged. They ended up having to throw those out. Then now they've come back for a third time, and they had this whole other grading system that they put in place, a ranking system where each commissioner would rank the applicants 1 through however many there were, and then you would total up the average of those grades, and then you could then they would award the license to the top 5 in the integrated field. That has been challenged because that violates a number of due process laws as well, because you basically then have one commissioner who could score an applicant at 30 and screw up the whole thing for him. So then you've basically got a minority rule type thing there. And so that has been challenged, and there's no way that's going to go forward. And that's on top of the fact that none of this meets the very basic requirements of the Alabama Administrative Procedures Act, which is supposed to govern these sorts of license selections, because you are issuing out a limited number of licenses by a state agency. So, have you ever in your life seen anything quite like this?
Never. In fact, this scoring system is the craziest thing I've ever seen. It's not supported anywhere in Alabama law. It is not supported, obviously, by the Administrative Procedure Act, and it isn't even in the Patient Compassion Act that established the commission itself. That they did in their own rules. And it appears it was simply designed to give them unfettered discretion in who would and would not get a license. And it is bizarre, to use a term. I've never seen anything like it, and it's not supported by any law in the state of Alabama. But it seems
Hey,
like
Jack.
a smoke
Oh,
and mirrors ability to hide things.
Hmm.
so Jack, you said something very pointed much earlier that I want to go back to. You said that the commission has violated the rights, the legal rights of all involved. Did I hear that correctly? That's what I think I heard you say. Is that correct?
Yes, they have. I mean, now obviously there's no damage to those who were awarded the licenses, but still there was no due process involved for any of the 35 applicants. Not a one of them. It was almost like the old Star Chamber routine where, they just simply on their own gut feeling or for whatever reason decide who will and won't be licensed regardless of the facts. And even in this scoring system, all they did was look at what was in the application. There's been no proof of the truth of anything in the application. You can write anything in an application, but nobody had an opportunity to challenge it. And even when they made the awards to 5 applicants, there's no record and there's no reason, no justification as to why one person was given a license or awarded a license and another was denied. It's just
So
completely in secret.
okay, so then let's just go on and get down to the nitty gritty, as we used to say back in the 70s. What is really going on here? Do you think that the commission has been compromised? Do you think somebody's on the take? Are we talking malfeasance or are we talking incompetence?
Be honest, I can't answer that because I don't have any facts to support it. But I would say, as one of my former law partners used to say, it does not pass the smell test. I mean, something is going on. It makes no legal sense as to what was done. I do know there is a tremendous amount of money involved, with these licenses. And in fact, some of the clients of the applicants have already spent millions of dollars constructing facilities. And so with that much money involved, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Well,
But
let
I
me
can't
ask you
speculate
this.
because I don't have any facts of what went on behind the scenes.
Sure. Yeah. No, and we don't want any speculation. But I mean, it's because I think people can figure this out on their own. I mean, you can take a look at this and say, hey, something's not right here, and you
Right.
can come up with your own conclusion. Or if people would start putting some pressure on some folks, I think maybe this thing would get done better. But and so to that end, what can be done now to rectify this?
Okay, fortunately, all of these lawsuits are in front of an excellent judge in Montgomery, Judge Anderson. And he is a very intelligent, thoughtful man, and he listens to every argument and reads everything that's filed. What he has been asked now to do is to essentially void the actions taken by the commission and to appoint what's called a special master, which is an impartial, usually a lawyer, who will actually start over and do this the way it should be done and make recommendations to the judge on who should be licensed and who shouldn't. The commission has screwed this up so badly that they can't really, in my mind, remedy it for one simple reason. The basic elements of procedural due process of law are notice of what you need to prepare, an opportunity for a hearing, and finally, before an impartial tribunal. There's no way this commission could ever be impartial now, because they have several times made subjective decisions as to who should be awarded a license and who should be denied a license. I mean, that is clear personal bias on the part of every commission member. And I don't see how they could give due process of law now. And due process, when you're talking about the right to go into an occupation, is a property right by Alabama Supreme Court decisions, and applicants are entitled to due process of law. And they screwed this up so badly, I don't think they could even give due process. Like I say, it's a mess.
Yeah, I think that's putting it gently, actually. So I guess let's say best case scenario, Judge Anderson rules, that the special master has to come in. He gets to the bottom of this, does everything right. How soon, if that were to happen, do you think we could get this medicine into the hands of the folks who need it?
Well, the hearing process would take time, and it depends on how many people are still involved. For example, let me give the closest analogy to what's happening with the commission with only 5 licenses to be awarded. The closest analogy is the Alabama State Health Planning and Development Agency, which regulates hospitals and health care. And to give you an example of a similar action, when I was practicing in Mobile, the state health plan was adjusted to allow for 53 new nursing home beds in Mobile County. And there were 5 nursing homes that wanted those beds. And so what happened was there was an administrative hearing before an administrative law judge, and the first applicant put on all their evidence. Their witnesses were cross-examined by all of the others that intervened. And as a conclusion of that person's hearing, the record was kept open. Then the next one put on their evidence, was cross-examined and everything else, and then the next and the next. And at the conclusion, the judge had heard all of the evidence for all of the applicants and could make an intelligent decision as to who the most appropriate applicant for those beds was. And it takes time. In a case like this, it depends on how many applicants there are, but it could take, probably 2 or 3 weeks easily to get all of these hearings out of the way. Then the special master would have to review the transcripts of all of the hearings, make a decision as to who the best applicants were, then give a recommended order to the judge with findings of fact, conclusions of law, and a recommendation as to who should be awarded the licenses. I would say you could do it probably the whole thing in 6 months. I mean, it really is. It takes a while, but nothing like the years that this crazy litigation has taken.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know it's a shame that we're at this spot, but hopefully what you said and and the information that we've been able to get out will help people learn what's going on for real here, and maybe it'll fire some people up and make some people move and do the right things, and we can get this out to the people who need it and do it the right way and make sure that it's done the right way and nobody's getting cheated out of this stuff.
Well, that's true. And part of the risk of all of this is it has created literally a nightmare for the people who want to get medical marijuana, and they're complaining to their legislators and everything else. And it may be that at some point when the legislature comes back in session, they get so fed up, they would just throw the whole thing out to get people off their backs.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, we definitely do want that, but don't want that. But I mean, we just because that is medicine that a lot of people really do need, and it's really effective for a lot of folks. But Mr. Mooresmith, thank you for coming on and joining us and helping us understand better what's happening here.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person. thanks to, it's easy for me to say, thanks to our guests today, Doug Jones and Jack Mooresmith. And really appreciate both of them coming on. Really appreciate our sponsors, the fine folks at Wind Creek Entertainment for keeping this baby on the air, along with the Southern Poverty Law Center and all they do, and the many other folks that support us, and you know, and up to and including, you know, just the folks that say, hey, we appreciate that, you know, we appreciate that, but not so much the people that say, you know, you guys are idiots, and I don't like y'all. Okay, we're not doing this for you. And but we are doing it for Don, who's right now mowing his grass somewhere. So Don, we really appreciate you getting out there and hustling, my man. That yard looks good. All right, you know, to wrap up, I do want to go back just quickly, and you know, because we were talking about some of the stuff involved with the ADP stuff, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but I mean, of course, we created the whole show about it, so I mean, we might as well round it out. You know, I just, you know, the more I sit and think about it, and the more, you know, that you just, because sometimes we'll get so into this, you know, we get so into this thing, and you can't see the forest for the trees kind of a thing. And so, you know, you take a step back and you think about it in terms of what others are seeing out of this. And, you know, I just think that right now, this party and the leadership that's there, I really do question what they value. All right. I mean, I question what they value in terms of the party objectives, because I see what they have done in terms of removing the caucuses and things like that, and creating this turmoil. No matter, you know, I can't even say that I don't think there's anybody who can look at what took place with those caucuses and adding those caucuses in and say that was the wrong thing to do. It was the right thing to do. It was bringing people in and giving people a voice in the leadership of this party. And I can't imagine anybody looking at it and saying it was wrong, up to including a bunch of people that then have gone back and said, okay, look, that was the right thing to do. We're going to let it go forward. And so the caucuses mostly are back in there now, but they fought it tooth and nail. And so why did they fight it? They fought it because it was about the power of controlling this party at the state level. And what it seems to me is what eats this party alive is pettiness. All right. The pettiness of controlling this small kingdom, you know, and I've heard the phrase, beware rulers of small kingdoms, you know, because those are typically the most petty of them all. And that is what has plagued the Alabama Democratic Party for the last several years, is this, it seems to me, this is my opinion, they want control of this small kingdom here, no matter what. And it doesn't seem to be to any real beneficial end for anybody other than the people that are in charge of things. I've not seen anybody else benefit from this.
Well, I'm going to say what I've said before, which is I think it is impossible to really analyze fairly and accurately this situation without taking the historical context into account. And let's just keep it real. Alabama, the Alabama that we know and love today, is a much better state than it was, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years ago. But the men who are leading the Alabama Democratic Party have been shaped by what happened, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And they see, what they see is remnants of that. They believe they see remnants of that in some of the actions that have been taken today. We can agree with that or we can disagree with that, but that's the bottom line. Do you really think that's true? Do you really think that that's true? That they see it? Yeah, I absolutely believe it's true that that's what they see. I'm not talking about what is, Josh. I'm talking about what they see. And that's the key thing here, which is why I continue to tell people, And I've said it here on this podcast. I've said it in other forums and settings. I think you have to approach this situation respecting that experience. You don't have to agree with the conclusion, but you got to respect that perception and that, because it's based on real life experience. So the way you approach things with people who have that kind of real life experience, I think has to be different. And I'm saying that as a black man in Alabama, in America, with a very high level of sympathy and sensitivity to that experience, and also from watching men, who are, 10, 15, 20 years or more older than me, what those black men have gone through, what has shaped them. And I say black men, it's not just black men, but black people, black women as well. What has shaped their perceptions and their outlooks, and really understanding that it is going to be much more challenging for them to look at something that I may look at, and even more so that you would look at, and not see certain things because of what they've been through.
I don't discount any of that at all. I just think there are a couple of things at play here that say they're bullshitting us. All right, and I'm not saying, I'm not arguing what what is reality versus that. I'm saying I don't think that they necessarily believe that. I think they're using it. I think they're, because, and I'll tell you the reason why I think it. In this case, this specific case, is the omission of Terry Sewell and Randall Woodfin, and the denigration of Jamie Harrison. I think that is, those things are. It says to me that you're wanting to create this narrative of that race is at play here, when first of all, you're talking about a ticket in which, even at the time when this was done, there was a female black person as the vice presidential candidate on this ticket that was the one making the changes, and the head of the Democratic National Committee that was a black man. And then in addition to that, you had the head of the delegation was Terry Sewell, and the other party of the three that were contacted about delegates was Randall Woodfin, the mayor of Birmingham, and then also Doug Jones. And then all of the focus was put on just Doug Jones.
Right.
And to me, it doesn't ring true.
So I'm going to tell you why I think you're mistaken.
Okay.
I think you're mistaken because, because I think there is a certain level of political maneuvering that comes into play in a situation like this that would make it logical that they would try to accept, and I'm saying accept meaning EXCEPT, not ACCEPT, accept certain people or exclude certain people from the conversation because they want to protect those alliances, but more importantly, even I'll say, because I think they truly believe that, I'll say it's analogous to this. If you think about the civil rights movement, you think about that juncture during which Martin Luther King Jr. and he was still, he may have been Malcolm X at that point, or he may have been El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, but either way, when those two men kind of came together, they came together in a way that was, as I understand it, that was a little bit subtle and was not all for public consumption, is the way I understand it. So there were some things that people saw, but then there were some things people didn't see, in which they were on the same page and working toward the same goal. And I think there's a protectiveness that exists in order to preserve the ability of what movement people would say is progress. So I think that's the reason you don't hear the criticism of Sewell and Woodfin at this point. The other thing that I would say is the reason you hear criticism about Harrison is because, and again, I'm not saying this is the case, but I think it is reality that there have been and there continue to be people in movements who are in fact tokens, who are in fact puppets, or even worse, who are straight up traitors to the movement. Now, I'm not saying that's a legitimate way to frame Jamie Harrison. I think I would like to assume that Jamie Harrison is simply having a legitimate, bona fide, legitimate disagreement with Randy Kelly and Joe Reed. But from their vantage point, it's not. Their perception is not. And so they are treating him as an enemy because of that. That would be my pushback to what you said.
Well, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I do, and I appreciate what and I've said before that I can appreciate the reluctancy of the Black Caucus within the Alabama Democratic Party to relinquish any sort of control. They fought for it. They, died for it, and so I understand this refusal to give up any sort of control on the rank and file folks that are there and part of the Black Caucus. That said, I think what has taken, I mean, I still hold, the same opinion of this particular situation. And that is that some of that has been utilized by the folks that want to remain in power to argue against what was a very fair proposal in my eyes, a very fair proposal to add additional caucuses, and one that met the bylaws, and one that was supported by a number of Black people. Not just at the state party level, but also at the national level, and they were told repeatedly that these things would bring you in line with the bylaws, bylaws.
But you would concede, I'm sure, that Black people are not a monolith, and that Black people don't all have the same experiences. And I'm telling you, there is a deep level of distrust. The older you move, I think, into the Black population, the more the older the folks are, the more likelihood there is you're going to find there's a very deep-seated distrust of white people and white society. The higher up you go, and that's because in age, and that's because of their experiences. So there may be Black people. I don't dispute that there are Black people who had no problem with everything that was done. But I'm saying you can attribute that to their life experiences. Juxtaposing their life experiences, however, to Dr. Reed's and Dr. Kelly's, you're going to find a different sentiment because of a different life experience.
I'm not saying otherwise. I'm just arguing that there's no white person to blame. There's no white. They've settled on Doug Jones, who was at best one of three of people who simply made recommendations over this, when the true catalyst or the true impetus behind all of this was the initial fight and the fight that has been going on now for the last 6 years between the state party and the national party and the national nominee. Whether it be Barack Obama or Joe Biden, with the state party leadership, which has been led by Joe Reed throughout this. Randy Kelly has been there all along, but he has not been the chairman up until 2022. But Joe Reed has been there. He did not support Barack Obama. He did not support Joe Biden. And I think those things carry some weight, along with the showing that have taken place now twice at national committee hearings over these bylaws, and the way that they kind of behave themselves, and the way they treated some of the people on those committees. I think that if you take a look at it, that's what caused a lot of the bad blood. And I think Doug Jones said it best on here. They're fed up with them. They're fed up with the way that they've handled things, and they're angry about it. And so they decided that, and let's be honest. If you say you're Joe Biden and you're taking a look at these delegates and you say, I don't know that I can trust those delegates selected by Randy Kelly and Joe Reed, At this point, that's a pretty fair position to take.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not a fair position to take from their vantage point. All I'm saying is that I'm trying to explain what I think informs the mindset of, in my opinion, of Dr. Reed and Dr. Kelly. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not talking about the validity or the right of the Biden-Harris or Harris-Walz campaign to make certain decisions. I'm saying that we have to look at this or evaluate this differently because of the life experiences of the people involved and how they see things. That's what I'm saying.
So you think it's more that than it is they just want to control. They just
I
want
really
control
do.
of the party.
I really do, and I think the use of the term. I shouldn't laugh because it's not funny, but I think calling. I'm sorry. Calling Doug Jones a neo-Confederate Democrat, I think, is the ultimate example of what I'm talking about. That comes from a very specific place. I don't agree with it. I don't think Doug is a neo-Confederate, and I haven't agreed with Doug on everything, and I've made no secret of that.
Right.
But I would never call him a neo-Confederate.
Right.
I mean,
that's
I think that comes from a life experience that is their life experience. My life experience, I may say something else about Doug, but I wouldn't call him a neo-Confederate.
No, I honestly, I had the conversation with him, and the feeling that I got was he was trying to be controversial. Because that was not the only thing that he said, and it just, and when I backed up and gave him another opportunity to revisit it, he doubled and tripled down on it.
Right.
And I got the feeling that it was for a show. He was trying to say something that was vitriolic, that was something that was going to get attention, something that was going to, and I don't know really why, what the purpose is behind that, other than to just bring attention to this deal and to show people that he's fighting for them. I don't know, but I got the sense that when he was saying it, it was something that he had thought about saying and something that he thought would get attention.
But I also think it's what he believes. I think both things can be true. That he wanted to be inflammatory, but that he also, and provocative, but that he also truly believes it. I think both things are true.
I mean, I understand that they have this beef back and forth with Doug, and and it's not helping anybody at this point.
I'm not saying it is. Yeah, I'm not saying it's helping.
I know that's not your argument. I know that. I just, God bless. It just, it goes on and on and on and on, and I just, and listen, things were certainly not great when the other side took over the party. All right, so things did not turn around, and in some ways, things are actually better run right now under Randy Kelly than they were. I'm just talking about from a mere, just a basic structure of the party and how things are operating right now. Mm-hmm. They seem to be doing a little better under Randy Kelly than they were under
doing some fundraising successfully, apparently.
Yeah,
at least from what we were told the last time he was with us. Sounds like they're raising money.
I mean, so it would really be nice if you also had the support of the national party helping, dump some money in those coffers.
I absolutely agree.
And stop alienating everybody. And but all right. So let's we got to do right wing nut. We got to get down. Yeah. We've given these people way too much. I mean, look at the interviews, and we've argued, and it's just, I mean, come on. It's first time on the show so far that I can remember that David's been really wrong about something. It's us.
No, well, that's funny.
That's why whenever somebody sends me an email or a message on like Facebook or something about one of my columns that I've written, they'll always say something like, "It's the first time I've ever agreed with you on anything," and I'll always respond back, "Well, you're finally right about something. I knew it would happen eventually." All right. Our right-wing nut for the week is Miss Caroline Dobson, who is running opposite of Shamari Figures in Alabama's newly redrawn 2nd Congressional District. And Caroline has as her platform, she wants to kick that CRT out of school. She wants those kids learning about white privilege and things like of that nature, and learning that there might have been some folks who had more of an advantage in life than others. And she wants to get rid of the Department of Education that's coming down here and telling Alabama how to teach people about fairness and the Civil War or the War of Northern Aggression. So then we come to find out that Miss Dobson has a bit of an interesting past herself. Reported by some folks this week. She is a member of a segregation academy, a graduate from a segregation academy, along with some of our other friends that work on this podcast. I'm not going to name any names.
Not me.
And not me. Proud public school grad over here, baby. We were 50-50 over at Austin High School. Yeah. So, you don't win 6A basketball state championships at a segregation academy. You know what I'm saying?
That's funny. Yeah.
So, listen, the hypocrisy of so many people, and, because a lot of people will say, well, Caroline Dobson, she doesn't get to choose where she goes to school or what, where her family put her. And that is 1,000% right.
Sure,
Nobody
absolutely.
is saying that Caroline Dobson made any sort of a conscious effort to go to a segregation academy, or that anybody should think lesser of her because she graduated from one. I don't think lesser of her because she went to one. Why I think lesser of her is because she went to one, and then and knows the advantages that she had, and then she goes back and tries to deny the education of people that might learn why those advantages existed for some people and not others.
Yeah.
That's where I have the problem.
Exactly. And I would agree with you 100%. We don't blame her for choices that her parents made for her, or for her being a child accepting the choices of her parents. But we certainly think as an adult, it was, you would like to think that an adult would have a more expansive view, and would, that she would have come to a more expansive view, and certainly not advocate for, something like the Chose Act, which is just funneling, tens of millions of dollars away from public education and into private school tuition, to the detriment of public school children, creating de facto segregation academies, or sustaining segregation, the current segregation academies. So, that's the problem. Yeah,
I get so irritated with people. This is the whole conversation we used to have about white privilege, and how some people would get so offended by the term white privilege. White privilege? I work for everything I got. Nobody saying you didn't work for anything you got, you morons. What are you talking about? Did you work for the lack of understanding that you've got now? Did you work for that? We all know, and this is what drives me insane is this is what I used to tell people. Whenever I would hear or enter into one of these conversations and somebody would get so angry about the whole thing, whatever, I say, all right, let me ask you a question. Do you know somebody in your life right now? Did you grow up with some rich kid in school that ended up running his daddy's business somewhere, ended up living in a great big house, or lived in a great big house when he was a kid, and drove around in a nice fancy car and didn't earn any of that? Did you know any asshole like that? And everybody knows 10, 15, 20 of them. They're talking about, jackass, he was so worthless, he couldn't do nothing. He was such a moron. And I would say, was that fair that he had those advantages like that? Well, I didn't have any advantage. Oh, I said, that's right. And that is basic white privilege. That's what what people are talking about. It's not that they did something wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. That person just had advantages through life. And some of them are extreme, like the example that I've just pointed out, and some of them are subtle, and some of them are ways in which you were working hard for something out there, and somebody just kept stepping on your head, just kept knocking you back. If you had that, you would say, damn, man, I wish I didn't have those impediments. That's white privilege, is not having those impediments where somebody was, denying you a loan application, making sure you couldn't live in this neighborhood, throwing out your application because your name sounded a certain way, holding you to a higher standard in school on punishment and things, and sending you up for disciplinary issues, arresting you for petty offenses and throwing you in jail. All of those things, that's the white privilege people are talking about. And why is this such a problem for you to admit? You're not, it's not like anybody's taking it away from you, It's just, but, Caroline. Jesus. All right, y'all go vote for Shamari and we'll never have to worry about her again.
There you go.
And until next week, y'all be safe out there.
Peace.